One thing your co-founder, CTO, Dharmesh, for those who don't know Dharmesh, incredible follow on Twitter.
And at Dharmesh on Twitter.
Exactly. He's incredible. He had a tweet that he wrote back in May that said, whoever controls your distribution controls your destiny. And what I think he was advocating for was that brands should seek to become their own distribution channels into their communities rather than just relying on the third-party networks, be it social media or others. Do you agree with that statement? I'm curious kind of where you think that's headed kind of for marketers.
Yeah, my friend and idol Dharmesh is a brilliant man. So obviously I agree, and I'm going to get there. But, it reminds me of like a very important first principle. One of the things over the years at HubSpot that we did is we would go on field trips. We still do, where we find a couple of topics we want to learn, and we go to companies that we think are great at that, and we go and learn from people there. And we used to, they're on Zoom now. We used to like actually go to the offices and all of that. And I remember sitting down with a lot of folks from Twilio a few years back, and George, who was COO at Twilio and before was COO at Salesforce.com, he was like, look, are you product constrained or are you distribution constrained? What is your core constraint to growth? And what he really meant was, do you have product market fit in the part of the market and the pricing and packaging and everything you're trying to do? And if you do, then you're largely just distribution constrained, that you don't have enough people who want to buy it. And most businesses, once they get past the early stage, are more distribution constrained than they are product constrained. And that goes back and forth a little bit as you evolve your business strategy and everything, right? So that really stuck with me, and I think stuck with Dharmesh. He was in there too, and we always wanted to be far more in control of our distribution destiny, especially because we know there's just a lot of saturation on a lot of the core online platforms. Google, Facebook, ad costs are going up, all of those things, right? And so that was definitely a core thinking for us in terms of building out a much broader and bigger media presence, and also into thinking whether we should acquire something like The Hustle or any other media property, for example.
It makes a ton of sense. I'm curious, because I feel like we're at this like moment of transition where social media or sort of the omni-channel kind of marketing as a source of distribution has been kind of the status quo for so long that now brands are starting to realize, okay, like we totally buy into this thinking like we should own our own, almost like direct to consumer type of relationship with our audience. I'm curious, what do you think happens to social media, or how should brands think about social media in context of also building out their own distribution channel here?
There are a couple things there, Anthony. One of the things when you think about distribution, you think about, there are kind of two flavors of distributions. There are distribution that leads to direct response efforts, right? That like, email marketing is a good example. If you have a daily email newsletter, people can subscribe direct to that and then, or click on an advertisement and go straight to something or product feature, whatever that may be, right? For example, same with a search result in Google, right? And so there's a lot of things around that direct response. And then there are aspects of distribution that have influence, that don't have that direct response, but have a high influence. You'll see things like TikTok or maybe YouTube Reels or Instagram, things like that fall into that bucket. And what I believe is happening is that search is fragmenting. And it's not been a zero-sum game. That Google search continues to grow, but people are also searching Reddit, TikTok, YouTube, all of those things, right? And so what's happening to social is that those platforms are becoming much more influence-driven than direct response-driven. And that's why you're seeing direct response ad costs on Google and Facebook go up, and Google monetizing the search engine results page more aggressively, because there's just less direct response inventory on the internet than there is influence inventory on the internet. And so when you're thinking about the future of social, you first are putting it in that influence bucket. And you're like, hey, I'm putting it for the purpose of like, it's distribution, but it's distribution to influence, to drive brand awareness, to drive consideration, to drive direct traffic, branded search, those things, right? And once you realize that, then it's just an efficiency game. It's like, where can I tell the best stories and get in front of the most people, And that is fundamentally, I believe today, largely video and short form video, right? It's largely TikTok and YouTube. And, Twitter is great for, engagement and discussion on like a niche topic. LinkedIn has some merits, all of those things, right? But if you're thinking about the true place where I think most people, most companies are going to invest more and more of their time, it's largely probably going to be TikTok and YouTube.
Which is crazy in a way, but totally true. Like I've been trying to get into TikTok, and I have to admit it's been a bit of a learning curve. But now
YouTube Reels is actually way easier.
Is it
learning
really?
Curve for whatever it's worth. Yeah,
But
YouTube Reels is awesome.
I'll check it out for sure. But I'm seeing this the virality or just the amount of engagement that you're speaking of is like second to none. And I think a lot of the smart companies are getting ahead of the curve and they're investing, and so it's just really a compelling format.
We're seeing TikTok across our podcast network, podcast friends we know. Like if you have a good TikTok strategy, it can drive 10 to 20% of your podcast subscribers easily, if not more.
That's insane.
Right?
Wow.
Because of the broad scale distribution, the awareness, and everything that it drives. Same with YouTube Reels, all of those things. You know, like we were recording an episode of Marketing Against the Grain earlier, and one of the things we posited is like, I think kind of the B2B webinar is dead. Like, I kind of think the B2B webinar should just be 15 minutes, and it should just be like a series of like 5 to 7 YouTube, TikTok kind of short form videos that automatically get syndicated out. And like, that is actually what the experience, like a year from now, 2 years from now, probably should be, because nobody's sitting in front of a computer and participating in an hour-long discussion anymore.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
The attention economy is completely shifted.
Shifted.
So, question: when you think about marketers who are listening to this and they buy into the belief, of becoming more media centric, they understand their need to own distribution, but they're kind of overwhelmed with the idea of creating quality content that is going to resonate. Maybe they're budget constraint internally, given kind of what's going on in the markets. Budgets are getting slashed. So my question is like, why is it worth fighting for this strategy over saying, let's just pump more dollars into AdWords? I mean, you talked a little bit about inventory there, but talk maybe a little bit about, do we need to spend top dollar to production in order to engage in a media strategy, or is this something that we can just do more off the shelf? Like, how do you think about that?
Well, look, I don't want to be hot takey, but probably not everybody should. Right? Like if you're in a cash flow business or you're in a short-term flip business situation, then like, play whatever arbitrage games you can on paid for as long as you can, and, ride out the next 12 to 24 months. If you have a longer time horizon than that, then you have to think differently. And look, my perspective is you have to understand every team within a company has different goals and time horizons, right? Like if you think about it, a product and engineering organization, for example, their job is to be as efficient as possible, to maximize every minute of somebody's time to work on the best and most important problems, right? Like that. Marketing is actually the exact opposite, where marketing's whole job is to basically be an amazing venture capitalist, to have high asymmetrical returns and fail at a lot of stuff. Right? And there's no way you can have any asymmetry in your marketing results if you're just doing the same thing everybody else is doing. Right? If you're just, I can tell you that direct response ads on Google are going to cost more 3 months from now than they do today because there's supply demand. Not Google's fault, right? Just supply demand in the marketplace. But what I can tell you is if you take a differentiated strategy that might take a little longer, might have a higher risk, that you have a higher chance for an asymmetrical return.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to win a category, especially in this world where most categories today are now winner-take-all markets, where the leader has 60, 70, 80% of that market share, then you're never going to get there on very iterative, incremental ways of thinking and funding that. And so you have to take some type of bet. This is one of the bets you could take. There are a bunch of other smart ones too. It's up to the business situation you're in, but you fundamentally have to do it if you have a long-term time horizon and you want to be the category leader and you need an asymmetrical return to get there.
Totally makes sense. That sounds great.